Right, we're back on again. And I suppose following that up, well, I wanted to ask you a similar question about capitalism, but before I do that, in terms of when we spoke the other night for your own channel, I was talking about that I would support Scottish independence as a way of a major rupture. What would be the equivalent? What's the state of the left in the United States, and what would it take to change the status quo?
Well, that's a difficult question. It's certainly different than Scotland, I'm sure, which still has people who are very interested in politics on a day-to-day level. I think most people are the silent majority here. I mean, that's what it's turned into. It never really changed except during the war. So any sectarian splits, you don't even use that term when it comes to the usual politics in the United States from the same parties. So I guess my comment is we're not even to the point where we can disagree with each other. It's just mediocrity.
Mm-hmm. So does that mean that there is no end in sight to that? Perhaps the next question is, what's the state of capitalism in the current day, and because we keep seeing the crisis that people on the left, particularly from Marx onwards, have predicted. Mm-hmm. The endless war, mm-hmm. The consumerism, the sort of trash culture, bread and circuses, seems to permeate. And you would think that would give us the opportunity for some sort of rupture in
we're not for Marx's idea of false consciousness, because people lull themselves into thinking everything's all right, and it's too complicated for them to think about, so they don't think about it at all, and they certainly don't act about it over it.
And I was interested, so I sort of used the word, I've moved left from who would be a natural Labour supporter to someone who, after a century of people voting for a working class party, I realise now that we're almost a sort of pale shadow of America, it's two sides of the same arse,
right?
That we're kissing.
But you've got a king, see, that's the difference.
But we can't vote him out.
That's right.
But we have to pay for him.
I didn't say that was a benefit.
Yeah, but it's certainly not a democracy. We're certainly one stage down the democratic ladder. That's one of the reasons that I'm a member of Republic, is that I'm a Democrat.
Yeah.
In the widest sense of the word, that I believe in people voting. I don't believe in an elite.
But what's worse than the hypocrisy of the United States calling itself a democracy, and England freely admits it's not. I mean, because of the structure of the government. It's like, it's a small point.
Yeah. And the question I wanted to ask you is, I would use, I've always considered myself a socialist, and I now consider the Labour Party no longer represents either left-wing or working class ideas, and I've recently joined the Communist Party. So in terms of the etymology, you would generally describe yourself as a communist rather than a socialist?
Yeah, I think I would. I mean...
what's the difference for you?
Well, the difference is that neither has reached the point that I would like it to. It's more practical to be a socialist. People probably wouldn't assassinate you if you said you were. Communist, I'm not too sure, but in the sense that socialism tends to turn into reformism if it's left out to dry, and communism is the next step from socialism. So one is very utopian, the other one is sort of practical, but it disintegrates into mediocrity, I think. Compromises within the Democratic Party. I mean, there's only one socialist in the Democratic Party to compromise with, but he already has. He's compromised himself thoroughly.
And just any in terms of your journey to communism, what were the sort of milestones that you've had in your life that have taken you from an army kid to a committed communist?
Well, they're not, mutually exclusive. I mean, I am not anti-military. The Soviet Union basically won World War II. They didn't win it with cooks and doctors. I mean, they won it with soldiers. So you can look at socialism and communism being It's just different versions of the military because there's all that sharing. There's the idea of communal principles that permeates the army. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive. But strictly when I came to it, I just started reading because I didn't know shit when I was younger, even in SCS, because the thing, well, you weren't encouraged to be a communist if you're in SCS, unless you were in the Weatherman faction, which I did join the Revolutionary Youth Movement, but by that time the war was just been over and the Weather Underground had already started. But reading was the thing. Reading is the key. Read Marx, read the Manifesto, and read Lenin, and it all makes sense. It all falls into place eventually. It takes a while, but it's almost like being recovering from the Catholic Church in a lot of ways. You fall, the scales fall from your eyes when you become independent intellectually, and it goes at a faster rate as time goes on. So, yeah, I'd say when I got out of the Army, I was recovering from injuries. I started reading and started painting. It was sort of integral,
Yep.
and they affected each other. Because certainly the visuals of communism are very intense, I think, in a lot of ways. So thematically, just visually, without the politics, I mean, that was a source of interest for me in painting.
Mm-hmm. And I just a final thought on, as a committed communist, is it a dinner table conversation stopper? Would your neighbours know? Your friends presumably do?
Well, I lived in a pretty liberal place in Massachusetts. They kind of look at you like you're crazy. It's not like they disagree with you. It's like, well, there's something wrong with this person, Yeah. I think that it's very condescending, I think, in a lot of ways. Don't shake up the ship sort of thing, and Massachusetts is one party state, which actually, resembles some communist states itself, But, I mean, I never got attacked or anything. When people come up to me and say they hate communism, I said, did you ever read the Manifesto? And that's the end of the conversation most times. Just ignorance, profound ignorance of what it's about. I mean, it's great you can talk about something after you read the Manifesto. I mean, that's fine. A debate is fine for that. But if you're talking to an ignorant person, it doesn't do any good. Like talking to a Trump person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty much, yeah. So, right. I mean, Massachusetts pretty tolerant. A lot of strikes towards. Well, no, that's
just start again if you're not. If
yeah,
you want to read
yeah. So I forgot what the question.
Well, so I was asking you whether it was a conversation stopper that you were a card-carrying communist.
Well, I mean, my paintings sort of echoed communist stuff, so nobody ever gave me any hassle about that. They just thought I was nuts. Yeah. So.
And often, I think one of the things, I'm an atheist as well as a communist, and I think the two things go hand in hand. If you're a Democrat and you're a rationalist, those two things make total sense, and yet even atheism is seen as somehow quirky in modern society.
Well, not in Massachusetts, but I think all the other 49 states it probably is. I don't know. Atheism. I can't even say that I'm an atheist because that's so absolutist. I cannot pronounce that. So.
Well, it's a conclusion rather than a belief.
Yeah.
It's a conclusion that.
Yeah.
If you work things out in the same process of education that you've done, I come from a Catholic background as well.
Indeed, you did.
That is the conclusion: is that you're not short of batshit crazy people, from the religious,
right.
getting elected in people in the USA, and people who should never be anywhere near public office.
Yeah. And of course they fill them now. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're to come out and say that you're an atheist, it's sort of seen as, that's so quaint.
What's wrong with you? Yeah, that's the same thing. I see what you're saying. It's the same effect on people. And if you're both,